This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, but it's only 9 p.m. New time, people, new time. And it is time for the Late Late Chat Show with me, Toby Cook, and my excellent friend, just back in from the pub, looking for his headphones, Ed Finch.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio.
Lucy, good evening. Can you hear me? Little check that my Wi-Fi is... Oh, it's come back to good now. Anyway, good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday. Lucy can hear me now. Okay, now. That meant she maybe couldn't hear me before. Interesting. Anyway, good evening, Lucy. Good evening, anyone else who tunes to listen in to Ed and me. Good evening, Ed, when you appear. And good evening or afternoon or morning to all those listening on Catch Up. Did cut out briefly. Yes, I know. I'm looking forward to a better broadcasting. Good evening, Edward. Here he is. Ed Finch is a speaker now. Good evening.
What? Just got
What?
From the pub. What? Just got from the pub, mate. What are we talking about?
I just got in from the pub. What are we talking about?
My son. No, because my son had his first ever GCSE exam today. First ever
Did
GCSE
he?
exam, and I've taken him to the pub, bought him a pint, admittedly of Coca-Cola because we don't want to get into trouble. But we've gone to the pub and had a pint to celebrate. That makes me officially old, I think.
It does make you officially old. Yeah. So what? Hang on. This is Douglas doing an early GCSE, isn't it?
Yeah, although they've made the whole year group do the English Lit a year early because that way they get to dodge a Christmas Carol. And like I would do almost anything to dodge a Christmas Carol myself. I think it's entirely reasonable. Yeah, do it a year early, and you get to do it on the the narrowed down curriculum. I think that's a smart move.
Right. Okay.
So he's been writing about. I've got a joke for you. So you got this joke. Why did JB Priestley make so few typos?
Why did JB Priestley make so few typos?
Look in the comments, see if anybody's got it. Somebody's going to know. Somebody's going to work it out.
It's only Lucy.
Oh,
Lucy,
well,
why did JB Priestley?
Why did JB Priestley make so few typos?
No idea.
It's a shame because it's a good joke, this one. Because he wrote in spectacles. That's a very good joke, isn't it?
It's very good. It's very good.
That would get a laugh, and he scorned. He said no, it wouldn't. But
it's got a laugh from me. See what you did there. What is the name of the chemical element with the symbol capital A, lowercase h, AH, chemical element?
It's the element of surprise.
Oh, it's the element of surprise. I love it. Good, you're on fire.
Has that on a t-shirt. So there you go.
Oh, good. Anyway, so we are on. It's early, isn't it? I mean, I know we did a one-off.
Early. Yeah,
we did a one-off early last week.
Pub and had a pint, and then I looked at my watch. I was like, "Ooh, we better run back."
I know.
I'll be standing Toby up, and I feel like this is more like a professional slot. So I thought it was so late, starting at 10. There was really no chance of anyone who wasn't either, unwell or drunk listening. We could probably get away with anything. But now we're on a proper slot, 9 till 10. I feel like we need to up the late.
We're on a proper slot. We've got so many live listeners. It's. We can't swear. We can't even say I haven't a rabbit's arse. As I said last week.
Can't say bum.
No, can't say that. Sorry. Oh dear. I think it does feel like a good time. It feels like a good time because 8 o'clock last week was too early. Definitely
was.
too early. 10 o'clock was too late.
Yes.
This is a good time, but one has to remember not to organise a crazy midnight week out on a Wednesday, because 9 o'clock is, it's sort of mid-evening, really, isn't it? Anyway,
Yeah.
so we've
Barely
got a
the
slightly new
afternoon.
format planned, haven't we, Ed? We've got a slightly new.
I think planned is too rich a word. Sketchily outlined on a WhatsApp message, half read, and a thumbs up emoji. I don't know if that counts as planning, but
True. But what I liked about last week
yeah,
was that I'm now confession Caroline, lovely Caroline, surname forgotten, um,
that's a really
who
unusual
loved our show
situation.
last week, listened in to our show on catch up, and she thought it was
Yeah,
had a wonderful sort of aura of chaos, and thought we were very funny, and I think the other sort of 5 regular listeners that we have on and off. To our either on catch up or live, I think also share that view. So we're a niche outfit, but I think we are popular with those people who've converted to the Church of Toby and
absolutely. I
Ed.
mean, just because other people haven't discovered us, that's not our fault, is it?
It's not our
I mean,
fault. No. I think, but I think that we. I've lost my train of thought. Gosh, what have I done there? But I think what we're best at is we just sort of talk and express our wisdom and our sometimes slightly controversial thoughts on matters of
if you think
teaching.
about it, if anybody was actually listening, we could get into trouble, couldn't we? But
Well,
it's
well,
pretty
you
much a
could, because
conversation
you're a
starter.
head teacher of a
I
Church of England
am.
primary school in Devon. I less so, I think, but we could. But I don't, yeah, we could get into a bit of trouble. But that's a sad indictment on the modern world, isn't it? Really, that we can't
Well, it
speak
is, yeah.
freely and
I
you know
don't think, I mean,
we're not being
I don't
rude
mind who
about
my
anybody.
boss is. I don't think he'd sack me for speaking truth unto power. Do you? I think
Truth unto power, indeed.
he'd say up
And
the workers. He'd say.
isn't
So we'd
that
be
the
fine.
name of a book by Jess Phillips, I think? Lovely, wonderful MP Jess Phillips, who I thought was quite good on Have I Got News for You last week.
Hmm.
But anyway, but I think it's good for us just to have a topic.
Yes.
This is the outline plan, and it is just a very, I mean, it's very sketchy, not even the back of a fag packet. But before the news,
We
which we
should buy
do
some
sort of
fag packets. Can you
roughly
just buy the
halfway through,
package? Yeah.
um,
I'm sure we do more
and
planning.
we are going to talk about something related to education
Yes.
uh, before the news, and after the news, something not related to education. Or
See?
this week,
Yeah.
it does link in because everyone's gone a bit Jubilee crazy,
They have.
and so that's our topic for after the news. Everybody is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Um, Ed's got some questions about this, which we'll come to later on. But
Oh, do I?
also,
Oh,
I
dear.
think I'd be interested to talk about what we're doing in my school, what you're perhaps doing in your school, whether we should be doing anything in schools. I think, and just just thinking
I
about
mean,
that
don't
70-year
spoiler
reign.
your Republican opinions on this one.
No, I'm not. No, you're encouraging them.
They'll be sitting at home going, "Oh, I wonder which way the boys will swing on this."
Well, I know I'm a little bit of an oxymoron on all these matters. Really,
Yeah.
I can swing both ways on matters of the monarchy. I think, particularly if I get to dress up as an early 1950s gentleman. But we'll talk
Yeah.
about that later on. So before the news, you've suggested this topic, Ed. So I'm
Yes.
expecting you to take the lead. You've
Expecting me to have an
suggested
opinion. Bum.
You've suggested
Yeah.
is cog sci, not cog
Yes.
sci, cognitive load
Cognitive load, I
theory.
think I said.
Cognitive
Yes.
load, is it the new learning styles? Discuss. So
Right.
over to you.
Well, I mean, I had to write something because you said, "What should we talk about?" And I was channeling, that as a fantastic Twitter. I think it is a bot. I think it'd be a fairly easy one to program. It says, "Is I don't know, are class readers bad for?" Give me another search term.
Bad
Are
for our class readers, bad for the Department of Education.
this is the
Or
sort of thing, and it's
yeah,
all
edubot,
or
edubot.
now new from TES is
Liz Truss, a man.
Yeah, this
No, it's not
well,
quite that right. Sorry.
no. But anyway, so that's also I was channeling that a little bit. But I do think, I don't know. Yes, you came into the education game. I should think after the very pink of the learning styles, didn't you?
I know, but I did come in. Yeah, I came into the education game, but my first head of sort of teaching and learning, head of kind of curriculum in my school, she was quite into it. And she was brilliant, actually. She was really, really good leader of teaching and learning, and she was excellent.
Yeah.
But I didn't agree with half the stuff she came out with. But she was passionate about education, and she read the TES weekly and other
Yeah.
bits of research. And so, but she gave me, I don't know, a learning style survey
Yeah.
to do with
And
my class, and
yeah.
I was very highly skeptical
Yeah.
at that point, but it then sort of disappeared. Well, she disappeared, and then it all disappeared.
Yeah.
So
She may
yeah,
be one of. I mean, she may have been one of the last true believers. I mean,
2014,
actually,
2014 that was.
probably there are a few out there somewhere, like some undiscovered valley, in a story where it's full of dinosaurs or something. There's probably some local education authority where learning styles never died.
Yeah.
Or the VAC, because they were different, weren't they? Learning styles was like you must have a sofa in your classroom because there will be a child who needs to learn lying on their tummy on the sofa, and you must also have a bunk bed. There are going to be children who need to learn hanging from their
And a
heels from the
pogo
end of the bunk
stick.
bed. What?
And a pogo stick.
A pogo stick, yes. Because what if there is a child in your class who, and that one, I bought a book about it just out of grim fascination, and it was pictures of classrooms. You go, I might be able to get 10 kids in here. They had 2 on the sofa, 3 on the nice fluffy rug. Yeah, no, that was pretty dreadful. But then there was the VAC stuff and stuff. And we think, we casually say, yeah, it's gone and died in there. And then there's always some story on the Twitter of somebody saying, you won't believe what they taught me on my first week and on my initial teacher training, and it's there again. Oh my goodness, what nonsense! And we all snigger at it, and we say what absolute nonsense, and we never believed in it. We all say that we were the person who was skeptical about it, and then somebody says, oh, but we had to do it, and it had to be highlighted on our planning, so I did it. It never was of mine, and I sort of date back to the right era. There was never any mention of it in the school I taught at. I did find one of those questionnaires. I made the kids do it, and all the kids said they learnt best through singing. And I thought that's because you like it when I get my guitar out, and you want to flatter Mr. Finch, don't you? Because you
Oh,
think Mr.
can
Finch
I
loves his
interrupt
guitar.
there?
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I like listening to children sing, not all day, but for a brief
In
moment.
reasonable amounts.
But I don't learn best by singing. That was the worst day on my PGCE when I had to. Because I did 7 to 14 PGCE. So we had
What did they
one
make you
day, I think
sing?
of.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What did they make you sing?
So it was in French, primary French. We've
Yeah.
been taught how to teach, French in like half an hour, a fortnight or something and oh God, I was singing, and I liked French at school, but I liked the rigor and the grammar because I've got a stupid memory, and I
Yeah, it's
like
different
detail,
nowadays.
and so it was all we were going around dancing and singing, and I just couldn't behave. I was so badly behaved. So most of the rest of the PGCE class, I was like, "What's going on? This is so patronising," and
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, but it
Well, I
makes
would
it
say that your
fun.
key stage 1 and your key stage 2 children, I think, that's a good example somewhere like what we're meant to be doing in terms of the modern foreign languages in the key stage 2 curriculum. They're not meant to be learning verb tables. They're meant to have a vaguely pleasant and enjoyable language learning experience so that they can say a few phrases, sing a few songs, and go to secondary school under the opinion that language learning isn't necessarily a torture. I mean, that's about it. So, yeah, they say, bonjour, je m'appelle Edward, j'ai 12 ans. They don't say 12 ans, do
You're
they? 'Cause
12.
they'd be too old, you'd be 12. That's when I learned it. You see, I didn't learn that at primary. I would have been a 12 when I learned how to say j'ai 12 ans, and I've basically learned it like a parrot, and that's what I say now. I don't know how to say, my name is Edward, I'm 50 years old. I don't know. I'm almost 50. More, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
terrible. I could if I hadn't been to the pub. I'd be fine with
Je
me on it.
suis
No,
14,
j'ai, not je
40,
suis.
40. Je
J'ai, how
suis.
many years do you have?
I have. Is it 14 or 40?
Caronton's.
Nerf. 40
Can we just check?
Nerf.
Lucy will tell us. I'm just going to see what if she's said it. 50 in French, Lucy. Quick.
50 is
No one else.
50. 50.
Yeah.
50, but I'm
You're
50
49.
moi un, which is
Yeah.
49.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh no, there's people listening. Oh my look, people are entering the live studio like nobody's business. Well, anyway,
good
all the
evening,
kids in my class
listeners.
beautifully put down on their learning styles questionnaire that they learned best by singing, and I thought, no, you don't. No, you don't. I can disregard this because I know you don't, because we tried that, and you do know, don't you? The metric Macarena. You'll have done that in your training, if nothing else.
Metric Macarena. I didn't do
Have you not done a
Macarena.
metric Macarena? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you go. There's 10 centimeters in a decimeter. There are 10 centimeters in a decimeter. There are 10 centimeters in a decimeter. Oh, decimeter. You turn round 90 degrees. There's how many millimeters? There's 10 millimeters in a centimeter. And you think you're doing a good job here, and the children have a great time, and they sing it, and they put their hands on their bums and on their heads and that, and they all turn around through 90 degrees. Marvelous. You ask them,
Marvelous.
you say, how many millimeters in a centimeter? Then they go, I don't know, 100. You go, oh right. The song didn't work.
Can I do my centimeter rant? Go, Ed. You're giving me so many cues here. So that I want to have a rant about centimeters.
Okay,
Centimeters.
We'll come back to cognitive science and VAC. Okay, we're coming. There is a point here. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. But first, the centimeter rant.
We're coming back to Cogload and VAC. But centimeters.
So well, this new format.
Centimeters are for school children only. They're an unnecessary unit. It's very convenient that because when children learn to count, they can count to 10 or 20, maybe 30, and that happens to be the sort of manageable units of centimeters on a ruler scale.
Right.
Whereas
About
in the real world,
gets you to a foot, and a foot is a much more useful unit of measurement.
Absolutely, but no. Well, no. It's not so much that. And I know Richard Newbold will appreciate this. That in the real world, who's listening, in the real world of measurement, we go up in factors of 1,000, don't we? So everything, you have millimeters, which builders call mil, and you have millimeters or meters or kilometers, and then you go down from millimeters to micrometers and nanometers and picometers and so forth, and it goes down in a factor of 1,000. And scientists and engineers and
things like
builders
and
architects use those.
Sideshow.
So decimeters and centimeters, and it's confusing for children as well, because you learn that there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter and 100 centimeters in a meter, and that becomes utterly useless and pointless, distracting knowledge once you actually start dealing with units of measure in a properly useful scientific or engineering or architecture kind of scale. And I remember this when I was a teaching assistant in Kingswood Primary. There was the teacher in year 4 class knew that she had a former scientist sitting in the back of her classroom, sort of, and she started getting carried away, and she was teaching grams and kilograms, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to teach, and then she started going off on one about milligrams and saying that there are 10 milligrams in a gram, and I thought, well, why are you teaching this to year 4? And then I realized she was trying to impress me, and I had to go up to her afterwards. I didn't interrupt, and I said, there are 1,000 milligrams in a gram, just like there are 1,000 millimeters in a meter, because milli means 1,000 times smaller, kilo means 1,000 times bigger, etc., etc. But she'd of course got this. She'd been corrupted by this millimeter and centimeter thing, but she hadn't realised that there was a centi in front.
Powers of 100. We don't want to know about that,
and all that sort of stuff. And so there we go. That's my centimeter rant.
That's
now
quite
let's
a good
go back.
rant. Right, back to
go back to VAK.
Anyway, what we've done here is we've outlined how humorous the whole learning styles thing was, and how we were too clever to be taken in by it at the time and things. And I just wonder if the cognitive load fashion or fad or whatever it is
Zeitgeist.
Maybe in 20 years we'll look back and go, was that? Do you remember that time when people went on like that was the only thing? Not saying it was wrong, Maybe there are children who like to learn lying on their tummies, But is there going to be time? I just don't know. I was like, did we not know this before? Did we not know that it's a good idea to break things down into little units so that children don't get overwhelmed all at once? Did we not all have a terrible car crash lesson where we tried to teach them too much and then went, oh, I see what went wrong there, you know? I don't know. So it's not that I'm not a true believer. I'm a true believer. Of course, you break it down. They need to learn little bits, and look how way we've been teaching for years to do it. I sort of think, well, how do I teach? Now I've been teaching the ukulele to classes all the years with a fair degree of success. I didn't need to read about cognitive load to think you can only teach one little bit, and they need to master that before we can move on to the next bit.
It's the
Otherwise,
whole edufad thing, isn't it? So
mm,
I think that I know that Richard is who's listening is a member of the Cog Sci community,
mm,
and that Charlie, who listens in sometimes on Catch Up as well, a big fan of that. And it if you're teaching a complex or a novel concept that is a little
mm,
abstract in science or maths, you know,
yeah,
to a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, then the whole cognitive science and understanding how the brain generally, in a generalized sense, learns, and you don't want to overload the working memory and all that sort of stuff.
hmm,
It is good. I think it's good science, and I think the
yeah,
application of that to cognitive load theory is a little bit more rooted in logic than
yeah,
VAK, than the
hmm, yeah,
but
yeah. Oh no, I don't
I do
disagree
think
with that. Not at all.
when it becomes a sort of mantra, I think the one flaw in all of this for me is that if you're wanting not to overload someone's cognitive load, you're not going to give them too much into new detail. You don't want to introduce too much. You don't want to
Hmm,
have anything on the walls either side of your whiteboard or your
hmm,
visualizer or whatever that's going to
yeah,
distract them. You want no displays, you want no distractions, you want and all that sort of stuff. But of course, what this doesn't consider is that the human mind is the greatest distracting force in all history. So if I'm
yeah,
sitting in a room and
hmm,
someone's trying to teach me something, whether I'm interested in it, want to learn it or not, I have the freedom at any point in any time to think about whatever the hell I like. And if you are an 11-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 17-year-old, with or without half a brain, you can't control that as a teacher. You can make them watch the front, eyes on me, all that sort of stuff, and you can
hmm,
you can do that. But even and you can give out detentions for not looking at the teacher or for speaking in the corridors, and you can do what you like. But ultimately, if the human decides to daydream
hmm,
or you know not be interested in what you're droning on about, then that's a
yeah.
cognitive load
And
problem.
I
We
just
we
say
we
we're
are
trying to
huge
reduce that,
distractors of
you know.
ourselves.
Yeah, we're trying to reduce it. You know, we're trying to reduce it. We go, okay, we know that the humans are hugely distractible, so let's clean off the nonsense off our walls. And they go, yeah, fine. I think it's a fairly, you know, it did not come, so some angel from the heavens to tell us this. I learned that. I learned that one when I took over a classroom where the previous teacher had put different colours of fluorescent paper all the way around the board. I mean, I have never seen such. It was just painful
Oh
to look at
gosh,
it, and the children were not learning effectively. If we'd had a pupil progress meeting, they would have suggested to me that the children were not learning very effectively. Also, it hurt my eyes, so I stripped all this fluorescent paper down and backed for a considerable distance around my interactive whiteboard with a plain black paper, as
mm,
austere as I could make it. And I swear the children's attention and the progress shot through the roof, and I'm like, it's not that complex. Nobody had mentioned cognitive load or cognitive science, but and I guess what they guys were saying, they say, yes, of course we already know this. Of course, humans have been learning since before there were even humans. We were learning when we were pre-human things, but we've learned how to optimize it and give you marginal gains. If you follow this and you put an icon next to the thing, then it might be a teeny weeny bit better, and several thousand teeny weeny bit betters add up to a couple more marks in a GCSE, and bingo, Bob's your uncle. But it
yeah,
just seems to be a reductivist model of what teaching is and how teaching is this beautiful thing that humans do for other humans, isn't it? It all comes out
yeah,
of
and I
our
think I think
our
that's the thing.
storytelling brain, and I think it's delicious, and it's relational, and it's tricky, and it's full of guts and juice and things. And sometimes to look at this stuff where the student is reduced to an icon of a student, and you think, yeah, none of
Well,
mine
I
behave
think
like
that's
that.
the problem with all of this, and this is my skeptical view
Mm,
of schools and modern education, and there's lots of wonderful things about it, which is why we choose to do it, and I like it, but we sort of the whole thing's become commodified. Education has been
hmm
commodified, whereas it's hugely complex. So there's some good educational research and there's some bad educational research,
yeah.
but teachers generally and schools and school leaders um, are perhaps being conned a bit more than they, in a way that we kind of think there's these magic bullets, or we think that if
Mm,
you do this, it will help your children learn better, and we can give our children the best chance, and we probably do know a bit more now than we did 50 years ago. But then,
mm,
having said that, 50 years ago, there was a lot of sort of, you know, rote learning, direct instruction, knowledge rich
yeah.
stuff going on, which is what we've come back to. So in some ways, actually,
Well, we've
um,
come back to that, and
in
we've had to give
pursuit of the sort of
ourselves
magic
the
bullet,
excuse that it's something new, haven't we?
yeah,
It's
um,
like, oh no, this isn't what we used to do. They used to just have a list of facts that they had to memorize, and then they had to use them in an essay at the end of term to prove that they remembered them. That's not what we're doing at all. You go, well, it kind of to me looks a bit like we are.
yeah.
Maybe education just has to go on around in a big cycle. But this idea that it's better now than it's ever been, when you look, I mean, I don't know where he went to school, but, Turing went to school and he seemed to do all right. Shakespeare went to school,
Oh
he
well,
was fairly handy, wasn't he? You know,
yeah, Newton, Einstein, these
are the
people, and
majority
they
of our
won't have
kids
learned
doing
science at
better than,
school. All these people, like
yeah,
the pioneering scientists of the 19th and early 20th and century wouldn't have actually had science lessons at school.
well, I'll tell you, no, they wouldn't.
they'd have done a lot of
The,
maths, they've done a lot of
yeah.
geometry, they've done a lot of Latin.
Well, it's good stuff, isn't it? But all these people who are like standing on their back legs saying education has been in such terminal decline that we all need to, sing from this particular hymn sheet. I go, well, you went to school. You went to school same time I did. You're all about my age, aren't you? You all went through school, the 70s and the 80s, and you seem to be so clever that you can now teach everybody else how to do it. It
Mm,
seems to me that your teachers did a fairly good job in Louis Althusser's model, at least, of turning out the means of their own production. If that reference means anything,
yes.
if school is a great big factory which turns out the kind of people who run schools, then it's done pretty good. I guess you have to tell yourself you're doing something marvelous and new, otherwise you'd collapse into the understanding that we're being paid to do childcare and not well paid at that. My word, that was a horrible, cynical thing to say. Let's move on from that.
I'm just gonna
Anyway,
butt in,
is
look at some
cognitive
comments on the
science the new
chat.
learning styles? No. We had a mass debate. We talked about it, and we said no, it isn't, because it's based on some sort of scientific understanding, whereas learning styles really never was. So no, Mr. Finch was wrong. However, it is possible that it's a little bit faddy, and that 20 years from now, people will go, "Oh, do you remember that?
Well, I think that's
Remember when we had to sit through that staff meeting and they talked
You
about
know
it,
what
and
the
we had to,
biggest problem is, though, is
yeah,
it's not the ideas. The idea about learning styles, the rootedness of it, is not daft. I mean, when I think
no,
about when I was at Pfizer, and I was working on a project that I won't go into great detail, but it was an inhalation powder project, and the powder
yeah, don't go
was
too much detail on that
agglomerating.
one.
So the milled
Yeah.
crystalline powder that was milled and micronized down to a very small size was in the powder blend was it was a kind of agglomerating, so the particles were getting too big, so they weren't going to get down into the deep lung, and
hmm
we were trying to kind of solve the problem of this for the specific project and what we could do around it, and of course and I spoke to my boss, who was a learned man. He had a PhD and postdoctoral research in particle and powder properties, and he said, "Here you go, read these 15 papers." And these were scientific research
Yeah.
papers that were all about 20 pages of tiny font size long. And I said, "Well, yeah, I could read them. It's going to take me a long time to read them. And couldn't you just give me 15 minutes and sort of summarize those papers?" And I learn best if I want to learn something new as an adult. I know I'm not a novice. I know I'm not a child, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I learn best by having a conversation with someone, and they can
Mm-hmm.
just speak to me, and then I can ask interrupting, clarifying questions. And so, I don't learn best by someone droning on at me, orally, or I don't learn best by making a pretty pattern on a piece of paper and touching things. I learn best by asking questions, and then a lot of people also when teaching that are also very skeptical about Bloom's taxonomy and all that sort of stuff. But it's true. If you really want to understand something, whether you're a child or an adult, the best way you can understand it in more detail is by teaching it to someone else, and so that triangle makes perfect sense, but it doesn't necessarily make sense for a 6-year-old for everything they're taught, or an 8-year-old for everything they're
No.
taught, or a 14-year-old for everything they're taught in school. Oh well, you're going to learn this best if you come up with your own little lesson to teach Billy next to you, and then you'll learn it better, because frankly there's not enough time to do that for
No.
everything. So, but the point is that I think we're constantly seeking magic bullets. I think it can be a bit faddy. I think just to summarize, I think we all need to talk about this more in our schools. And that's the schools that are the best schools, is where they get the teachers together with a fantastic teaching and learning lead, or academic lead, or curriculum lead, or whoever they are, and spend I don't know, an hour a week, or half an hour, or an hour a fortnight, just talking about how they think children learn in their subject, or how they think it's best. And this is what someone said at their TED talk, and this is what someone said at the Art Research Ed talk that I went to, and this is what someone said at the Brew Ed thing that I went to, and this is someone said in the TES, and what do we think, and just talk about it, so that these fads don't sort of gain momentum and credence when they don't necessarily, and then are misused and misinterpreted, and become a box tick, and that's when it all goes wrong. I just want to pick up on Lucy and Richard on the chat. They put, I'm a rebel and I have a periodic table on the wall. I think there didn't used to be a periodic table on the wall in my science lab with my predecessor, and I thought, you can't, that's just wrong. You can't have a science lab without a periodic, just because it's iconic, regardless of any learning. It's very important. The science lab should have a periodic table on the wall. Thank you, Richard. And Richard said, yes, nailed it, Toby. Intrinsic desire to learn beats all. Exactly. So it's how we can make children develop that intrinsic desire is the most important thing.
Develop the intrinsic. This is curiosity, in short terms, isn't it? I've got this class of children in my school who I just seem to not have the curiosity.
No,
find it
cohort
deeply bizarre.
varied, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, only the one class. The others have it in spades, and I just look at it and I think maybe they're the exact age where they didn't develop it because of the lockdowns. Maybe it's that the age they are. Maybe they missed.
Which year? You can you say which year group that is, or you're not going to say it?
Year 3 is.
We've got our year 5. There's some really nice kids in year 5. So year 5 were in year 3 in the first lockdown, and they've just not got that curious drive that
I could take in, I could take in a piece of rock that came out of a volcano, and I could show, look, this actually came out of an actual volcano. It was burning hot. It's cool now, I can hold it, but can you imagine that came out of, and they would look at it and go, whatever, I could I could do like some amazing poem about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. I could read them Chocolate Cake by Michael Rose, and they'd look at me and be, yeah, he's reading a poem again. It's just like, come on, guys. If I can just light a little fire of curiosity, the rest of it will go up.
Can I pick that as a topic for us to discuss, if not next week, another week?
Yeah.
Is the chemistry of a cohort. So I sometimes think there probably is one curious child in that class,
yes,
but because none of the others are curious, they
aren't finding any
curiosity
expression
gets
of it,
sapped,
and they're not being. And they're sort of of the opinion that maybe it doesn't look very cool to go. That's really interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that. That's not.
That is the lottery of education, isn't it? It's whether you get.
It is.
If you
so
get a
you're
teacher,
in that. It's not a very large cohort either. So the bellwethers, the influential children in the class are, they are that little bit more influential, I think, because there's not that many of them in there. So
interesting.
If you could light the fire of curiosity under them, then you could use your learning styles or your cognitive science or whatever. Like, you wouldn't need to. You just go, look, here's really cool stuff. Let's learn about it. Oh my goodness, who knew? Whether it's photosynthesis or the Kingdom of Benin or whatever it is, if you've got children who are switched on,
Yeah.
Just tell them stuff and let them look at some books. They'll learn it. It'll be fine.
Cool. Right, Ed, are we're gonna have our break and then we're gonna come back and talk about
All
the
right.
Jubilee?
And how long is it this time? How
7
long have we
minutes,
got?
3 seconds, everybody.
Oh, my
7
word.
minutes, 3 seconds for your adverts and your news and your tech update. It's back in 7 minutes, people. Bye-bye.
This episode of Teachers Talk Radio has been made possible with support from Witherslack Group, the UK's leading provider of SEN education and care. They're here to support you too through an ever-growing offer of free resources, including webinars, podcasts, articles, and events aimed at supporting teaching professionals like you. Visit their website at www.witherslackgroup.co.uk to find out more.
Imagine a world where you were free to focus on sparking curiosity in your students and giving them access to the awe and wonder of learning. A world where you were supported to deliver a truly personalised education to help all your learners achieve their potential. No need to imagine it, because that's exactly what the Oxford Smart Curriculum Service delivers. Seamlessly integrating curriculum, resources, assessment, next steps and professional development, every component of Oxford Smart is connected and working to provide you with a uniquely coherent and responsive service that empowers you and your students with transformational effect. The Oxford Smart Curriculum Service. When everything connects, anything is possible.
stevewoods.co.uk for educational support in IT and computer science. Coming up, I'm delivering a number of courses. Learn to Program in Python is a free 1-hour course designed to start you on your way into Python coding. Everything works in a browser, so there's nothing to install beforehand. Join me remotely to learn the basics on Wednesday the 8th of June, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Visit stevewoods.co.uk to start your journey. Are you a state school teacher in England? Why not be a hero this half term and join me for 2 days and receive up to £1,360 in bursary. Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at stevewoods.co.uk.
If you're listening to this, then we know we share one thing in common: a passion for the type of outstanding education that every child deserves. That's what makes us the leading provider of specialist education and care. We need people like you to help us achieve even more. With us, you'll be given all the resources and support you need, offered a clear path to career progression, and be rewarded with some of the best salaries and benefits the industry has to offer. We are Witherslack Group. If you'd like to find out more, we'd love to hear from you. Visit www.witherslackgroup.co.uk/careers and be part of our future.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn.
Two former Tory ministers have called for immediate action from the government to curb rises in student loan interest rates. Former Business Secretary Greg Clark told The Observer, "A 12% interest rate on student loans is an outrageous charge that the government must prevent from happening. It is a breach of what students expected, that interest rates on loans would be no higher than market rates. And it risks frightening off new students from entering higher education, even in courses like science and engineering, at a time when the economy desperately needs these skills." In April, the Institute for Fiscal Studies has calculated that because of current RPI inflation rates, the maximum interest rate on loans paid by those earning £49,130 or more will rise from current rates of 4.5% to an eye-watering 12% for half a year. In Wales, head teachers have said that some primary schools are not ready to introduce the new curriculum for Wales and would like the choice to delay it. More than half of secondary schools have chosen to delay and will not begin teaching the new curriculum until September 2023. And they were given the option in response to concerns that COVID disruption had left schools unable to plan for the new curriculum. NAHT President Karina Hansen, who is also a primary head teacher in Swansea, said, "Primary schools have understood that they need to start their new curriculum offer in September. We weren't offered that relaxation, secondary schools were. The reassurance we want is that our accountability partners are also clear that schools will be in different places and will need time to refine their curriculum offer." This has been your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week I'm going to talk about virtual tours. Did you know you can go virtually almost anywhere without leaving the classroom? Due to this being an audio podcast, I'd just like to point out to listeners I did air quotes around the word virtually just then. On Sunday, I tweeted a great list to start from created by Katie Burke of Good Housekeeping. Before you start asking why someone as cool as me is reading Good Housekeeping, a good list is a good list. I'm going to tweet a different virtual tour at TT Radio every day this week. So keep an eye out if you want to pick up a new virtual tour. So what is a virtual tour? They take many forms, but my favourites are interactive. Go to a place like the Louvre and look around without the need to buy a ticket, queue, and even have an unobstructed view. Use snipping or print screen to make a storyboard, then reflect on your journey for an activity. There are virtual tours for lots of things you wouldn't think of. I found one for the digestion process, where you can look around whilst being swallowed, digested, and yes, it finishes with you being excreted. Lovely. Next time you're looking for a way to explain something, just check and see if there's a virtual tour that can support you. I'll be tweeting at TT Radio 2022 a different tour each day this week. Yet another good reason to check out the TT Radio 2022 Twitter feed. Follow us and tell us what you want to know about tech. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
And 3, 2, 1, back in the room. Come off mute, Edward.
I was only a little bit muted. I wasn't very muted.
Hello. Now we're going to talk about the Jubilee. But
Yeah.
in order to talk about the Jubilee and all things Jubilee in schools, out of schools, la 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 la, I am now going to insert my newly purchased second, possibly third or fourth hand pipe in my mouth and speak
good.
as I would do
Yeah.
if I was 49, nearly 50 in 1952, teaching
Right.
in my prep school that I teach in now. I suspect I
Yes.
would have spoken like this, and I probably
Well,
would
you
have
would have
smoked
had
a
to in a
pipe.
prep school like that, yeah.
I would have done, yes,
Absolutely.
and I probably would have smoked a pipe, or I may have smoked a cigarette regularly, not in class, obviously. But I've got my pipe for tomorrow. So we're having a street party at school in the garden,
Not in a
organised by the
street, then.
PTA.
Are we
not a
allowed
street
to
party.
call it a street party?
If it's
when
in a garden.
Is that not
All
a
right,
garden
we're
party?
having a faux street party for
I
the
think you're having a
Jubilee.
garden. The Queen has garden parties all the time. It's much more royal to have a garden party than to have a street party.
Well, actually, I don't know if we're calling it a street party, but we're having
Having a
cake
party.
and on tables. And
There'll be cake, there'll be tables.
there'll be cake, there'll be tables, and there'll be Union Jack flags, and
good.
there'll be teachers dressed up in 1950s clothes, and the children are wearing red, white, and blue.
And for the
no
vast
football
majority of
strips
those
or rugby
teachers, it'll
strips.
make no bloody difference, will it? I mean, that's just what do you normally wear to work? A pair of slacks.
Yeah, but you see, I've done my research, and the thing that I'm most fascinated by, and I've been thinking about this before we get into it, is that 70 years ago was a really long time ago culturally. So really, really, really
It
long
really
time
is.
ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is.
unbelievable. So you think I can't, even though the world changes fast, I cannot imagine any other, regardless of whether we become a republic or not. But let's leave that for a minute. But I can't imagine any other monarch in this country or collection of countries living through more cultural and technological change in their reign. I mean, I know Victoria lived through a lot herself as well, but I think you think not much has changed since the 60s in terms of youth culture. So we had the contraceptive pill in the 60s, and in the late 50s we had rock and roll, mid 50s, late 50s. So the concept of the teenager was sort of invented, and youth culture started probably mid late 50s,
Yes.
certainly took off in the 60s, and it's grown faster and crazier ever since. But in the early 50s, we were all either old buggers or children, and there was nothing in between.
Nothing in between. No, absolutely. No, my father and my mother,
And that's quite
although they
interesting
were
to
of an
think about that.
age to have done sayings, they went straight from child to old person without going through teenager.
Yeah,
Whereas
it
my
wouldn't.
mother's sister was a teenager briefly, and it was considered to be very, very funny. You know, she said, "Oh, she came down to London to stay with my mum, and my mum was living in London, oddly enough, working in some secretarial role, and her younger sister, who I think was, just sort of in mid-teenhood at that point, came down. She came down so she could go to a teenage party. My mother was like, "What's a teenage party? What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, it's a party for the teenagers." "What the hell is that? What do you mean?" Because people who are aged between 13 and 19, they have a party. It's a teenage party. My mum could not figure it. But, it's a very small difference in age between the two, but I think a very different
Yeah.
outlook.
I mean,
shall we
adolescence has
say.
always existed, but it was sort of ignored, presumably. I mean, people when
Yeah,
people
well, I
had
mean, we could do the whole rites of passage thing, couldn't we? So, well, listen, you're a child until you have your bar mitzvah, or until you spend a night in the forest by yourself, or until you pass this thing, and then you'll be expected to act like an adult and have and there's a cutoff there, whereas we don't have it. So you've got to find your way through the woods yourself without a clear marker, and so which is why you get people who are clearly too old to be acting like teenagers still acting like it because they never had sign off, we'd say.
no.
Anyway, yeah, so there's that whole change, and then you could and we could say, oh yeah, during her reign, not just during her lifetime, during her reign, look at computing and the internet and things. I just wonder though, if you lived through Victoria's reign from beginning to end, wouldn't you have
Yeah.
said, "My God, look at the change we've seen. Have people ever seen change like this before? We've gone from a primarily rural economy to a primarily industrial
Yeah.
economy. Our
No,
cities
that was
have
probably bigger.
grown."
The Industrial Revolution was
It's a big old
fundamental.
change, isn't it? But I just think if is it the one that you've lived through that because we've seen, my God, we've seen Tamagotchi and loom bands in our lifetime. We've seen fidgets. It changes the whole time. Fidget
No,
spinners.
I think
I
you're
don't
right.
think that was always the case. I think if you were living through
But I
the
mean,
medieval period,
culturally, I think
hundreds of years went past where there wasn't a great technological or cultural change, and I know that's true. But
that's the
are
thing is
things
that
just
yeah,
getting
until
faster all
about
the time? Is it
500
getting so
years ago.
fast we'll all fall off? I don't know.
No. Anyway, Jubilee. So I've just told you that tomorrow we have got our garden
Yeah.
party, street party,
Well, I
whatever.
haven't got that tomorrow.
And what are
On
you what are
Friday,
you doing at Chagford? You must be doing
at
something.
Chagford's primary school, on Friday, we're having a party on the grass. So we're having scones with jam and cream. We've invited some of the old folks in. So we've got the old folks who go to the Memory Cafe have all been invited to come down.
Oh,
And
lovely.
they're going to join us, and we'll sing a couple of songs. And there's going to be, I'm told that there's going to be Jubilee bingo, and that I'm the caller. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, have you
I'm trusting this will just be put in front of me on a piece of paper, and I don't know.
I
There's
only know
that.
two fat ladies. What? Oh, I
Yeah,
don't
well, I
know.
mean, it won't be, will it? Because you say
You'll
I
have them in
don't
the
know. I'm
audience.
just like, I'm very happy to be the caller. It's fine. I'll bring out the big speaker and a microphone. Don't worry about it. But you'll have to tell me what to say. Tomorrow,
Yeah.
I'm much more excited. Tomorrow, I'm going to speak at a conference, and I haven't done that since before the pandemic. So I'm excited about that.
What are you speaking about
Frankly,
tomorrow?
I'm talking about reading. Unsurprisingly, it's one of my subjects that I got asked to
It is,
speak about
and
from time to time.
where is that?
Exeter Racecourse. That's where I'm going. Exeter Racecourse. I don't know which room. I don't know whether it's a big room or a little room. I don't know how many people are booked onto this conference. I haven't a clue. However, I'm the warm-up guy for David Didow and John Thompson. So I hope there's enough people to make their drive time worthwhile. And I don't think either of them lives near here. So yeah, no, it's great. Well, how flattering to be asked to go along and do a thing, and I haven't done that since way before the pandemic. So happy days. I shall have a little bit of a lie-in and then tootle down to the racecourse.
Oh, sorry, Ed. Everyone can probably hear you, I hope. Brilliant, Ed. Lucy said, so you've obviously said something funny, Ed. And because Lucy's just said brilliant, Ed, and I don't know what you
Brilliant.
said.
Okay, but you didn't hear it. Well, I shan't go on about. I'm doing that anyway. Yeah. So Jubilee. Am I conflicted? I am conflicted. Yeah, we were in a staff meeting, and my youngest member of staff suddenly piped up and she said, "What are we doing about the Jubilee? We have to mark it." And I was like, this was a few weeks ago. I was like, oh, I'm embarrassed to say I genuinely hadn't even thought about it, hadn't crossed my mind. I can't summon up an interest. She said, well, we have to mark it because it's important and the children, it shouldn't go past without the children noticing it, And I thought, fair enough. I'm sure I didn't have a great interest in the Queen in 1977, but I have very clear memories of the Golden Jubilee back then. No, Silver Jubilee, isn't it? 1977.
Silver Jubilee, 1977. I remember collecting my mug from the village
Yes,
green
that's
in Langtree Village. I don't remember doing anything in school. I was only four and a half, but we probably did do something in school. Yeah, I remember all the Jubilees
I
in
remember
different
there was
ways.
a Jubilee Sports Day up at Top Nutfield. I lived in not Bottom Nutfield. We didn't call it that. We called it South Nutfield. But when the top end of the village is called Top Nutfield, then it's pretty obvious that the other end of it is Bottom, isn't it? Anyway, they had a big sports day, and it was exciting because somebody had a microphone and a speaker set up, and they let the children queue up and say, "Hello, my name is William," or something, And I stepped up and I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, take my advice, pull down your knickers and slide on the ice." And then I was removed quickly. I would have been about 5. So I remember that very clearly. And I remember the street
Always a
party. I
rebel,
do.
Ed. Always a rebel.
I know. But I remember the street party very clearly. And I remember, having a Jubilee coin thing. What do they call it? Jubilee crown, was it?
Yes.
So yeah, I'm like, actually, you're right. This is a moment that I should just put my exhaustion and my cynicism for one side. So I said to her, no, yeah, fine, you want to organise it, you organise it. So she's organised scones and jam and cream and the old folks coming in and the Jubilee bingo. And we had to do a fundraiser last week so that we could buy every child a Jubilee bookmark, which I'm like, that's something you're going to treasure, isn't it? A Jubilee bookmark. You're going to save that. And will they be in 40 years? Oh, I remember when I was at school and it was the Queen's Jubilee and we had a tea party and Mr. Finch gave us all a bookmark. I hope, I don't know. I mean, I've got literally no interest whatsoever in a monarchy, but yeah, maybe it's nice to have those shared
I
markers.
think that I mean it's a bit like me and God and church and tradition. My mum's a staunch monarchist. Absolutely loves the Queen. She hates Prince Charles. She absolutely detests Harry and Meghan, and obviously anyone who's normal, even including my mother, thinks Prince Andrew should be erased from history. But she was a hugely worshipped to the church of Princess Diana, and she thinks Anne does good work too. But I think so. I've grown up. I'm the son of a staunch monarchist. My father, he was born in 1917, so he wasn't as staunchly into the whole thing as my mum, but he was kind of of that generation where. But I think so. I think the difficult thing is it's so deeply ingrained in our culture. So if you remove the street party and the Jubilee celebration, regardless of your views on the Queen or not, and you remove all that, then and it may not be some of it, the bunting and the sort of jingoistic side of it can be ugly. I appreciate that, the jingoistic and all the red, white, and blue and the kind of the quite close association with things like National Front and BNP and all that. It all gets a bit. But there's an awful lot of people celebrating community and British tradition, whether you like it or not, that are just kind of decent local people, right? And so I think the community side of it, the coming together, and I think it's a shame that we all drink tea and eat cake rather than sipping quality wine and eating olives, which they'd be doing in Italy or Greece or Spain or somewhere, which I think would be a far more interesting thing to do if we're all together in the street to get, I suppose we might be drinking pints of beer, too many of them, and then having a fight at the end of the day, possibly.
Not at school on Friday.
No,
I'd
but
save
I'm
that for the
talking more about
weekend.
the Jubilee in general and the whole
Yeah.
community thing. And I think if you remove all that pageantry, then I'm not, and all that stuff. I don't know. It's removing a part of me, and so. But then on the flip side, I do think the whole thing's completely outmoded, and I love going to London and walking along the Mall and seeing the changing of the guard, and I think, God, it's a marvelous, isn't it? But then the other part of me thinks, what a performance, what I'm not into the whole ceremony thing and all the gilted bloody carriages and the whole just think what all that money could do. But then Lord help us if we had someone like Boris Johnson as president, or even Des Lynam as president. Who was I thought a good candidate for president several decades ago.
Des
now,
Lynam. That's a
Des
great
Lynam,
choice.
where did he come from?
I don't know
He
where
was
he came from,
everywhere.
but I mean, people were expecting to say Pep Guardiola or something when they were Desmond Lynam. He was calming, avuncular. Loved him.
He was great, wasn't he? And so, but
Jimmy Greaves.
Jimmy Greaves.
No, he'd be a terrible president. I don't vote for him.
But I think so. So yeah, I think a bit like me and religion, and I if I'm honest with myself, I am an atheist. If I'm honest with myself, I am probably a Republican. But
yeah,
if you removed all the churches from this country and the calm, soothing, beautiful architecture and those buildings, and you removed the street party and the Jubilee and the celebration of, I know the Queen's an immensely privileged woman, but she has had no choice but to do what she's done, and as a human being, it's a rather remarkable bit of history, really. So I don't think, I think, it was on Question Time last Thursday. There was a question about there was some football match, wasn't there? And there's some booing during the national anthem, and I think Prince William got booed as well. And the question and the Question Time panel were very, very clever and said, well, I can see where that comes from, the Liverpool to Hillsborough stuff and all that disgruntled sort of, the people are fed up with the establishment, and so virtually the whole panel sort of said, if people choose to not sing the national anthem or to boo it, it comes from a place where people are pissed off and people are angry about stuff, and it's not the Queen per se that they're disrespecting, it's the establishment and the system and so forth. But there was one person, of course, the Tory person on the panel, said that's outrageous, blah 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 blah. And so I don't know, but I think it's I'm not really a particular resident of a village, so it's the first time 10 years ago, I was dressed up as the Queen in a wheelbarrow race in Marden Village in Kent. And 20 years ago, I was also in a wheelbarrow race between pubs when you didn't have to get a license to close the roads. You just did it anyway. But it's all crazy now. If you want to have a street party or you want to have a wheelbarrow race around between local pubs and do sort of crazy local things and throw flour at people whilst being pushed in a pram or something, all these bonkers things that we do. You have to get a license from the council now. It's all very complicated. I think it's all rather lovely. I think that's quite endearing, but equally when it gets a bit jingoistic, when it gets a bit and if
it's
you're
hard
told
to pick
off
it apart, though, isn't it? Because we are specifically celebrating 70 years, and so we look back to that time when she was there, so we are looking back, so if you're having a garden party with a theme of 70 years ago, you are celebrating a time when the ending of the imperial period and the colonies was very, very recent, when our country was less diverse and certainly less public diverse. You are there's a
Much
reason
more
why you're
patriarchal
dressing up
society,
in that
etc., etc.
costume and stuff, because you're going, no, this was 70 years ago. This isn't. We imagine this is how they might have talked and how they might have dressed, and it's all good fun. But it looks. I was saying this to the vicar today when he came to lead assembly. He was like, well, I feel I have to do about the Queen and the Jubilee. I don't see how I can swerve it. That's. And I'm like, no, of course you can't. You've got to do it because that's the thing. And I said, are you celebrating someone who's put in 70 years of public service with, forget about the wealth, a great deal of humility, because it just probably isn't a whole lot of fun, I think, most of the
God,
time.
it was
from the
hard
Queen.
work. I mean, I know
Yeah, and all
she's.
of that. Are we celebrating that, or are we having a nice time thinking it was better in the 50s when we still had a couple of colonies and, our country in our I mean, I wasn't alive in the 50s, and most of us, alive today weren't, So, we're looking back to a time when everything was better, and it probably wasn't. You still had your
No, it was
rationing,
just
didn't you?
different. It was
When
just different.
when she's comes to the throne, we're still rationed from the Second World War, aren't we? I think it's not really a terrific time.
Yes, again, we'd
You
still
know,
be
a
rational,
great
still
deal
be
of the
national
cakes and
service,
things
I
on the
think.
table tomorrow would not have been available, and I don't know. I mean, yes, it just feels like, you go, yeah. Maybe we appear to be celebrating something rather jingoistic and rather ugly. People go, no, there's a good reason why it's themed on the 1950s. That's when it happened. Okay, yeah. What's the bit you're enjoying? It's a bit like when you watch, if you're watching Till Death Us Do Part, I see that you're
Yeah,
really enjoying that show. Are you enjoying the
I can't
biting
watch that
satire,
anymore.
or are you enjoying, are you having a cake, or are you eating it? I don't
Mm.
know. You've got to trust people, I think. At this point, do I begrudge the children their scone with cream and jam? No. Do I hope that I will also corner at least one scone with cream and jam? I mean, no. I will get one too, and I'll make some jokes about it, and we'll all feel slightly awkward because none of us, I don't think, in my
Well,
little.
we're overrunning, but we need to finish with a bit of music. But I think I am in two minds about it. But I don't think I feel the guilt about it that you perhaps feel in some ways.
I
Is
feel a
that
little
I quite
discomfort with it, but
I
I'm
quite like
prepared
the
to run
discomfort.
with
Yeah, I
it.
quite like the performance of. I like dressing up. I don't like fancy dress parties. I like dressing up if I can get into character. And so, if I can just try and imagine what it would have been like to be the teacher in the same school that I work in now, at my age,
Yeah.
but 50 years, no, 70 years ago, and I can just have a bit of fun with that. It's a bit of acting, it's a bit of
Yeah.
performance. I'm going to make a few children laugh tomorrow, which I enjoy. I might
So
make a
am I.
few of their parents
How
laugh as
different? I mean,
well.
that's actually an interesting question. I know we are running over, but I mean, how different do you think that job was? There's some of it was very different. You've got the internet, you've got an interactive smart board. The children are learning stuff on computers. I
I
expect.
think we should talk about that next week. I think that's a
Yeah.
really good question. I think we've got next week sorted. We're going to talk about chemistry of cohorts in
Yes.
teaching and the effect before the news, and then we're going to talk a bit about how different would it have been to be a
Yeah.
classroom teacher in the same school you work in now, provided it existed or a very similar school existed.
Yeah.
How different would it have been 70 years ago? And and
It's a
and
good question.
I think that's something for us to ponder on next week. Although
I'm
it'll be
just
hard.
looking for a ukulele. There must be one in this room somewhere.
Come on, Yuki up, boy.
No. Some people would have found the ukulele before they went on stage, so to speak, wouldn't they? Anyway, never mind. Here we go. Is it in tune? Oh no! When you maybe you should have practiced. Not sure. God save the Queen, the fascist regime that made you a moron, a potential H-bomb. God save the Queen. She ain't no human being, and there's no future in England
dreaming.
Korg solo.
Oh, Korg solo. Oh, hang on, I've turned it down.
Okay. Oh no, looks
No,
like.
it's gone. Why's it gone?
Don't be told what you want. Well, it's got more chords than I was expecting. It's going to be a 3-chorder punch, though, isn't it? Go on and check it. God save the Queen.
God save the
We
Queen.
mean it, man.
We mean it, man.
God save the Queen.
God save the
It's too much
Queen.
money. And our figurehead
And our
is
figurehead.
not what she seems.
Not what she seems.
She's not what she seems. Oh, God save history. God save your mad parade. Oh, God have mercy. All crimes are paid. And when there's no future, how can there be sin? Where the flowers in the dustbin, where the poison in your human machine. We're the future.
We're
Your future. You
your
see,
future.
we're your. It's quite clever, that bit, I think. God save the Queen. We mean it, man.
Man.
We love our Queen.
Queen.
God saves. God save the Queen. There you go. There you go. I'll practice
Well,
for
I
next week.
don't think there's anything more worth saying. We've talked about what's on next week, Ed. I'm going to see you. We're going out on Tuesday. I'll see you in
are.
Devon, out in Exeter. Be warned.
Exciting times. And,
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you on
very
Tuesday.
much. Have a wonderful weekend when it comes. And
Take
don't
care
drink
and have a
too much
great.
Jubilee
Everyone
gin.
is on half time at the half term at the same time this term. Just 1 week for I think anyone, whether you're private school or state school or secondary school or primary school or Devon or Leicestershire, we're all off at the same time. Rare that, I think.
Des Lynam, better choice than Frank Boff, says Richard. Fair point.
Des Lynam is definitely better than Frank Boff, although I preferred Grandstand to whatever it was that Des Lynam presented.
No, look, we've talked enough. We've gone 6 minutes over. It's time for bed.
Yeah. Oh dear,
See
we've
you
another
all.
fail.
Night, everybody.
Night, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening back. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.